Hi, this is Marlene Gibb, and today's guest is Gigi Johnson. And Jeannie, I'm going to not ask her what she does, I'm going to tell you what she does. She is a Renaissance lady, and she'll be explaining all the various aptitudes and passions that she likes. So we're going to have a real fun day today.
All of them. Wow, that. I was going to say, how many hours do I got for that?
there's your.
Oh dear.
Okay.
We're joking. I do tend to write and draw and stuff when I talk. So we are equipped with the ever-present Sharpie. So that's good.
Okay. All right. So let's start. How do you want to start? How you work with art, technology, transformation, and music.
A subcategory of it all: education, lifelong learning.
Yeah.
So I've been at. My students say I'm in my 9th career. I'm not sure how you measure these. I presently, 2/3 of my life is I'm at UCLA. I've been there 20 years, but part-time, full-time. And presently I run and created the Center for Music Innovation at the Herb Alpert School. So I do research, programs, public speaking, teaching, but I also have had a company now for about 15 years called Miramel that I put all the other passions in. So I tend to recommend extensively to people, including my 20-year-old students, to always have a company on the side. It's now called a lot the side hustle. Chris Guillebeau talks about that a lot.
Yeah. I've seen him.
And I'm a big World Domination Summit fan. I've gone for years now to that whole convening of people. That's a whole nother conversation. I'm a conference addict. I love to go to live experiences. But Miramel's my place where I put all the other crazy, fun, creative things that I've been doing and grow new businesses. Right. But I'm always suggesting to people to have that side business to put your passions in. So no matter what you're doing in the box that's your normal job, that you have some place to incubate your next whatever you're doing.
And the side hustle's good.
Side hustles can be good.
Yeah. So look at it's on YouTube. I've watched it on YouTube.
Side Hustle. So he's
that's a podcast guy.
So Chris Guillebeau has Side Hustle as a podcast. He has one a day. It's amazing. And he has a book, Side Hustle. He has a new book that just came out. He's on book tour now in July of 2019 when we're talking. It's like his, I don't know, 6th book. The first one was the $100 Startup. So,
okay.
But we could talk just on Chris for a long time.
Yeah,
I'm a gigantic fan.
Yeah. So go on. So you have the side hustle. Go back into your box career.
Oh dear. So
so let's go into. But you learned a lot from your box career.
I've learned a lot from, including here at KGM. I did a show for a while, so not everybody. It hasn't been on for a long time. So,
but your name is still known here. When I say she's coming in, yeah.
So, I've been in Monrovia for 25 years. And Monrovia has been a great home base for doing lots of adventures. And Miramel was created as a company here in Monrovia. I was a banker for 10 years before coming to UCLA at the business school. Before that, I was in advertising, and you can't see me as a banker. Neither could some of my clients when but I was banking the entertainment industry. So I spent a decade traveling the world, working with major companies, doing workouts of folks in financial trouble, helping finance a lot of the casinos now, News Corp when it was going through problems, lots of theater chains, radio, early cellular, back when they were originally auctioning off rural licenses. I was helping fund that. Early CD-ROM, doing a lot of really interesting, crazy things with companies who were looking at new tech and media, and working with financing films.
See, that way you went to school. You went to USC Film School.
I went to USC Film School.
So you knew. I mean, then in the banking industry,
I was weird.
Yeah.
Because I was a creative. Yeah.
And so you're working with other creatives
Well, I tend to comment life is like a whole series of Venn diagrams, and actually tend to draw them a lot when I talk, and my students look at me blankly and basically go, you actually use Venn diagrams in the real world, but it's how I think. That there's all these petals of things I've done, and the overlaps are really interesting, and my overlaps are so unique that it creates opportunities. So I have a film undergrad degree.
Right.
And with that, I was doing documentary work and marketing while I was in film school. But I also was in student government there, which is how I met my husband of 30-something years. And we're really different bubbles. And then I was doing then film school stuff, but I liked marketing. So my next shift was doing marketing, and I did advertising and PR, a couple different companies, worked on Hands Across America, worked on a bunch of really cool things in advertising and PR, Mattel, CBS. And I had that interesting complexion of things, went to get an MBA, and I'd mostly learned in marketing that I couldn't stand marketing. I loved the concepts, but I couldn't stand being on the client relationship side where when the client said jump, we had to say not only how high, but yes, I can throw away my weekend plans and do whatever you need done. And so I went to business school thinking originally that I was going to do marketing, and fell in love with finance. So here I had this weird combination of things.
Yeah, you do. That's why I'm saying you're the Renaissance lady.
And
you can't box you either.
No, and what I actually spent a whole year doing then is figuring out what can I do with these leaves. So if I put them all together, creative work, advertising and PR, knowing how radio and TV works, really good skills in terms of sort of thinking about markets and marketplaces. And so the interesting fit was financing film and television and radio and all the pieces of the puzzle, because I could translate these disparate spaces. And then set a lot of money aside doing that. In banking in that era, I kept being afraid I would lose my job because everyone kept merging and consolidating. And 10 years in, I was still doing it, traveling extensively, having 3 kids. At one point in time, I was traveling 80% of the time. And so lived in New York for a while, worked in New York, worked here. At the same time, was doing creative work, was singing. I've been singing since I was a small puppy. Singing jazz, being part of jazz groups even at the bank, which was fun. And then I got to the point after enough mergers and reorganizations that I got really tired of the whole thing and cashed out. I had options and things. And went to talk back to my alma mater for my master's program and said, so, looking for ideas. And at the time, they had an applied management research program where all of the students had to do real work with a company as a group for 6 months as their thesis.
Okay, so you went back to USC.
UCLA, where I went and got my MBA.
Oh, but you got your undergraduate at USC.
At USC.
Okay.
So I come from a fairly poor family. So I'm a scholarship kid. Otherwise, I was a trustee scholar at USC. Thank God for that program, phenomenal program that let me go essentially for free. Otherwise, I would not have been there. And I would not have met my husband there. And I would not have met some of my best friends there. Or really stretched creatively to step into film school, which I stepped into from someone sending me a postcard with my grade going, you should think about film school. So all my pivots have been these interesting things.
Where were you born?
Fresno.
Oh, okay. So go back.
I'm a 5th-generation Californian.
Okay, so you were born and raised in Fresno.
Mm-hmm.
And when did you come to?
Moved to Northern California to follow a job of my dad, who is essentially a draftsman, but an uncredentialed architect.
Yeah.
And he would do the design behind creatives. So he would do a lot of the draftsman work behind really intriguing individuals and difficult people. And that was his career. So we moved a lot to follow jobs. But we were in Northern California as he did various things there. My mother worked full-time to make ends meet, doing technical writing, which was an interesting field for women in that era, where you would
chemistry books and stuff like that.
Airplane manuals.
Oh, okay.
And so she was kind of an organizer coordinator, would help write repair manuals and things like that. And then followed jobs down to here, and ended up down in Orange County for high school.
Oh, and then when did you come up here? When you went to USC?
When I went to USC.
And what part of Orange County are you from?
Placentia, North Orange County.
Oh, okay. Yes, I know Placentia.
Placentia in many ways has changed a lot and not changed at all. We grew up in the area we grew up in Northern California, which was the area of Los Altos with no sidewalks, which is still has no sidewalks, but it used to be a not all that well-off area, and now the homes are a few $1 million and varied for the same two-bedroom house we grew up in. So,
Wow.
yeah.
Oh, that's okay. So now, and then when did you settle? You said 20-some years ago you settled in Monrovia?
Yeah, so
So what drew you to Monrovia?
my mom.
Oh, okay.
Well, we were looking. My husband was managing a paper mill in Pomona, and I was working in downtown LA. So that kind of set the spectrum, and we were looking for something in between where we could come back for kid care, and it would be a predictable drive. And that was back in the era of predictable drives, which I'm not sure we have now.
We don't have them now.
So we were looking for something that was somewhat between Pomona and downtown LA that we could afford, so we kept moving further east.
Mm-hmm.
And Monrovia has always been a lovely community. It was a little bit more, I was going to say rugged, but that's not the right word, variable than it was. We were on a block with a drug dealer and users and cop cars out front. They were videotaping. I mean, that's when we moved in for the
Yeah,
block we're on. It's
yeah.
it's a different block now.
Yeah, when I moved into Monrovia, we moved in 73.
Mm-hmm.
And we lived on Monterey and Chestnut, that corner. And we beautiful apartment, but there was drug dealers and everything. We didn't know till...
Well, I didn't know till after escrow closed. It was
You're
like,
right.
oh, wow, thanks.
we didn't know, yeah.
We got a neighbor's kid who I was going to continue,
Go.
but they watched the show, so I'm going to continue.
Okay.
I'm going to continue onward and not narc on my neighbors. No, but it was interesting as to the behavior and lifestyle and growing up in Monrovia and finding different people and ways of living all in the same community. It's been a really great place to bring up kids and also to run a small business.
Yeah. So you're going to stay here.
We're going to stay here.
Okay, so let's go back to this.
Circuitous. Well, part of it, though, is that I thought I wanted to do documentary work. And that was what I did in film school. And then I couldn't, 200 resumes, couldn't get a job, couldn't get an interview. So I finally was, and this is of an era. I mean, I ended up being in the top 5 all-around graduates as a woman at USC and couldn't get a job. And so I ended up being essentially a secretary when I graduated. Mm-hmm. And this is what life was like. All my female friends ended up in clerical, and the guys went on to grad school. So,
Kind of like Mad Men.
kind of like Mad Men.
Yeah.
And my life was a bit that, working at an ad agency, typing and pulling sheets, and but it was in the 80s, not the 50s. But
Yeah, 60s.
60s for Mad Men. But it was working the teletype and pulling orders off the teletype, and was doing creative things on the side and kept being told not to. And I was not on the creative side; I was on the media side. So it's been an interesting journey to get. Monrovia is the place we came while I was being a baby banker, to be able to have a place that was safe, inexpensive, and a good place to bring up kids. Mm-hmm. And then the kids have all thrived here. And then I ended up moving my work to the West Side to step in at UCLA to run a program there, working with students and companies and strategic change and all sorts of cool stuff, and kept driving back and forth. And it used to be to go to downtown LA, it was 42 minutes. It was almost by clockwork. And it's now 2 hours each way in rush hour to UCLA. So I appreciate that whole difference in where everything is here and stuff. But I've been at UCLA part-time or full-time, and then grew things on the outside at Marymount. And then for the past few years, I've also had one or other nonprofits on the side. So part of it I got in 99 when I started at UCLA. I came into a really difficult job that was broken. The program had all sorts of weird things happening. All of the grad students had to go through and do a real strategic project with companies, and systems-wide, the whole thing was a big old mess.
So this was like music. This is
This is overall for the entire MBA program.
Oh, okay. So you're in the MBA. Okay.
So I was at the Anderson School for about a decade.
Oh, okay.
And had the privilege after spending, so in banking, let me back up. In banking, I spent 10 years lending money to companies in media who needed it or didn't need it. We spent half our time begging companies who didn't need money to use our money, and the other half the time trying to lend money to companies who are credit risks And that's where banks make a big chunk of their money, are off the flakier end of the spectrum that pay thicker margins. But you always have to make sure they're not going bankrupt. So I worked that whole spectrum of working with treasurers and chief financial officers in various sectors that were changing. So I spent a lot of time selling and doing relationship management with top treasury officials from major corporations, private and public, in media. So in music, I was still singing on the side, but I was doing nothing in music. And then as my narrative goes on, I really didn't do anything with music until about 2004, 2005, and then I began to do albums and concerts and things. But I, meanwhile, though, had an expertise in media and in finance and in dealing with large corporations and selling to major influencers at corporations. So there I have, back to the petals, right?
Right.
Where do you take that stuff and put it together?
Now, draw your petal.
Okay, I will draw my petals.
I've talked to you for so many years. You do
Well, we met here.
Yeah, we met here. I was doing my show here,
So,
and you were teaching here, and people really liked your work.
well, we'll come to the teaching part of things here. So,
We're on your petals now,
my
so
petals.
the audience can understand what. Okay, so we got. Okay.
So, if these are my petals, so I've got music, media, sales, and finance.
Yeah, I can hold it.
So, music was more the personal side,
Right.
and it didn't really overlap at all.
Okay.
So, I was doing this for fun.
Yeah.
And this part, though, I needed to find something that could pull those together.
So you wanted something to glue it, right?
Well, I needed transplant, and so part of it in banking, one of the challenge with a lot of industries is that you get stuck. That people see you as that,
Yeah.
and then if you're looking at what transferable skills you have, sometimes there's a really difficult time in looking at that transition. So people would look at me and say, well, would you like a treasury job in a company? And I would in my mind go, you're just moving money around or doing budgets. And it's more complicated than that, but that's not what I wanted to do. And then did I want to go work for another bank? Oh, no, not really. So I needed to find a way to transplant my skills. So I went back to where I went to my master's, to UCLA, called the Graduate School of Management at the time. And I went back and talked to two of my mentors, two very important people in my life. And one of them said, hey, we have this job. We need someone who can deal with companies and strategy and students, which I didn't have experience working with students and other faculty, to do these strategic projects. They need to be found, manicured into place, monitored, and be able to represent yourself to major companies. So one of them said, this job is open. It's really cool. You should take it. The other person said, it's open. Don't take it. Do not take it. They were both right. It was a mess. It was high stress. It was working with 350 students, 40 faculty, 90 companies a year, and nobody was happy. Some people are happy. So we built the program.
And you were married at the time?
I'm married forever. Yeah, I was married at the time, and
I know.
and married with 3 kids, 3 small kids.
Yeah, that's hard.
And so it was a high stress, high challenge. I learned a lot. I liked the university environment. I was in a real high friction role that by its nature, a bunch of people weren't happy with me. But I was building skills and building an understanding of a university setting. And I wanted to come back to the media side more because I was really looking more at kind of sales and finance and kind of organizational skills. So eventually I had the opportunity to say, hey, there's a media program. It needs a remodel. It's been around since 1977, but really needed to be expanded, real opportunity.
Right.
So went to the dean at the time and I said, I really want to be more in this other spot here. I want to be looking kind of at sales and media and strategy and looking at all the changes that tech is having, though I wasn't a tech background at that point in time. And so I convinced them to let me shift And that's been my saga ever since, is that I tend to say, well, hey, there's this new place in between. And I see that this is an opportunity for you, organization, or you, client. I'd like to shift into that different combination.
Hold on a second. So you are really looking, because this is important, other people looking for work.
Mm-hmm.
It's these middle leaves that intersect.
One of the phrases is boundary spanner. That I'm in
boundary spanner?
Yeah, I'm in an interesting spot that's a bridge.
Okay.
And so that I have a unique combination that makes me valuable to stand in the middle. So for me to be able to stand, I tend to call it town and gown, between the university and large companies or organizations or civic organizations, that I understand both. And I have other skills that are an interesting interweaving that make it so that there's not 25 people who can necessarily do what I do. Or there might be, but it makes me add additional value.
Okay. How did you position yourself when you were doing this?
I thrive by having somebody in the organization who's willing to stand up for me, who already knows me, and that's one of my other themes. So both those guys, one who said to come, one who said to not, had known me since I was in grad school and had followed my exploits. A third person was willing to step up for me because he really needed this fixed and was willing to deal with all of the interference I needed run for me to be able to grow and build stuff and to build out my skills further, etc. So usually I've got a hero in the organization who lets me do weird, crazy stuff. So when I went to move from running this program into then running the media program for the business school, it helped to have people who would stand there and go, we will vouch for her skills and the fact she does things differently, that we want that and we're willing to stand behind it.
That's important.
It's really important if you don't have that. And I did lose that at one point in time, which among many other things shifted my focus to doing other things. I tend to come in, build, create, and hopefully create a long-term program where other people can run with it and I can go do something else that's crazy.
So you want to get it
sustainable systems
and then say bye-bye.
Optimally, a lot of people don't want me at times to say bye-bye.
Yeah, but that's it. How would you, since you're talking here with me, how would you...
We should probably have a map someplace in the show notes to explain all this later if you go, what? But yeah.
How would you explain this if you were teaching people, let's say with mid-year transitions?
Mm-hmm.
Because that would be, young people don't have enough of...
Some of mine do. I mean, I teach a bunch of 20-year-olds now.
And they're doing these...
They have weird, interesting overlaps already. I have one student who was a painter in high school and sold paintings in blanking which country in the Middle East. And that was what he did, but his family didn't think that was a school thing. Yeah. So he was supposed to be an engineer, but then he ended up with me in music. And so we had a 3-lobed leaf thing going on that made him incredibly special. And the challenge is we all have different lobes going, even if we're 20 years old.
Right. Oh,
but the box...
Your aptitudes, I found, even with me, you carry your aptitudes with you. They don't go away.
Well, they could expand. Yeah, they could be...
Or they can contract, but they don't go away.
But they can swing back around and loop in and
loop out.
Yeah, and it may be that this job doesn't have that creative aspect to it, but you bring something to it, or it's ready for that next thing, so when you've got the next overlap that you could swing in to pull that and deepen it. But most jobs aren't that way at all. They're little boxes created by committee to keep people from being sued at a later date.
Okay, well, yeah. I remember I went for a job many years ago, and before Tom and I were in business, and the woman said to me, she was talking to me about, we had to take these aptitude tests, and she said to me, I've noticed that you can go from A to D, but we really need someone who can go do A, B, C, and D. I mean, I just made the leap. Mm-hmm. They didn't want me to make the leap, they wanted me A, B, C, D, and I realized that I wouldn't.
But companies more say they want people who can do the whole creative disruption thing, that can make the bridges, who can go the additional direction. They say that. I mean, when they talk about the fact that what we're oftentimes not having coming out of the current undergrad population are folks who can bridge and make the leap. I used to chronically blame No Child Left Behind because students would come to me from schools all over the country and world, though, which blows the No Child Left Behind part. But they want a template. Give me the template. I need the template. I need to know exactly what A goes into B. And to be able to go A, B, C, D, and then bridge it backwards is stuff that a lot of folks aren't thriving on, because we've made people templatize their results for a reward so much that it causes a lot of fear to go all the way to D for a lot of folks now.
What about the people in their 40s? How are, because if they're getting laid off from jobs, how do they handle stuff like this?
Well, and part of it that the job description,
Here's another piece. I know that.
the job description is a box, right?
Right.
So it might be, I have my preferred thing, and it's not I'm looking for someone who can grow in this direction. And so for a lot of companies, it really is made by committee. It's taking the prior job description and editing it for the stupid thing the prior people did they never want to repeat. You can look at the job description and see what prior people did wrong by the number of times that words show up. And there's a cool tool called JobScan, which actually quant that out for you. It's really cool. I'm a big fan of JobScan. But it's not asking for where you fit all the lobes into it. And so I'm always telling people, don't get to here. That you want to find the company and job and conversation and opportunity before this job posts. That you want to go in and say, okay, I have all these great lobes. I'm really looking for, I'm going to make the assumption that there's maybe 20 great jobs that I don't know about yet that are at this overlap. Who would that be? Where would that be? And go talk to people and say, I have these really unique skills. It looks like you've got some great challenges at your company where this overlap is. Can I come in and do a project with or for you? And then you can describe the company, the people, all that stuff. And the thing with these boxes now is that you talk to companies and they say, well, we posted the job and we either got 500 resumes, which is too many to go through, but we got almost nobody qualified, or that we got we didn't even go with that. It's so specific that we got a few qualified applications, but we ended up just going with the people we already knew because we had to float the job, or fly the job for X period of time for our policy. But we already have interns, we already have people we know. But you talk to companies that go, well, I picked 30 people, and it's so easy to submit on Indeed and LinkedIn and whatever, that we had like 30% were fraudulent, that they made all their stuff up. Another 30% never applied when we emailed them because they're just throwing things over the fence because it's so easy. And so, they're getting junk on their side. So if you can avoid this whole box set and basically say, okay, here's the place I really want to find. Let me do research and really find in the world the places that are doing the cool things that I would really love to do, and go talk to human beings and say, where are you going? What are you doing? I want to talk with you. And you may not have a job open now. But the thing is, that's so, I was going to say embarrassing, but it's putting yourself out there. And a lot of people in this text message, email,
They don't want to face
IG modality, they don't want to even have a phone call.
I know. I've heard that.
Yeah. Most jobs are in companies of fewer than 50 people, and they may never post. So can you go and talk to a human being and say, okay, I'm 40 years old, I'm not going to necessarily be your intern, but is there something you're working on that I could maybe do a part-time job with to kind of see what you do and to see if we can grow it into something? Or to basically say, I have these great superpowers. Who are the places I really want to work, and go talk to them before anything ever posts.
And this is what's not taught.
I would disagree. So there is,
How many you're talking
Dick
about?
Bowles, 40 years. What color's your parachute?
That's a very good book.
It's been in there, and glad to shout out those guys. They have e-parachute as a current thing. Gary's now running the company and his team there. Hello, if they watch this, I'll actually send you guys the link. But they've been trying to figure out how do they take this 40-year-old modality of having these conversations with people to go explore. and both update it and shake the trees for people to say, hey, we've been saying this for 40 years, to go out and informationally interview and go talk to human beings.
I read Bowles, but I went through testing at the Johnson O'Connor Human Engineering Lab, and they've been around since 1919, and they test aptitudes, and it's, you know where you're good and you know where you're bad. There is no question when you finish those tests where you are, and they teach you, how to.
See, I'm really big though. I'm really big on so there's that testing. There's the Gallup testing, Strength Finder.
Strength Finders I like, but I think
there's SDS, which is self-directed search.
No, but getting back, I want to talk to you about that because I think Strength Finders, because I took it. It's big strokes. They don't get into the nitty gritty, and sometimes it's the nitty gritty that's going to hurt you, not the big
Well,
strokes.
part of it is that none of it's going to tell you anything you don't, first of all, kind of already know in your heart of hearts, but it may open a lens to something that you think you may not have remembered about yourself or your relationships with other people. So somewhere in the mix of things, I'm going to back up and come back around again.
Okay.
So in 2005, I had a massive anxiety issue with work. That it had almost gotten too successful. I was running an entertainment practice at the school. I had an office in the basement, and had a lot of expectations and no budget. And had gotten a major research study with some major companies to be taking a look at anti-piracy issues at the time.
Oh, yeah.
And realized it was just more than I wanted to be doing and no support really of what was going on. That center since then has all grown. One of my past students is running it. It's all really great. But I realized I wanted to go back to my creative work and needed to bring my anxiety level down. So I started producing shows here at KGEM on technology and kids and music, started singing, started doing a lot of creative work. But I really had to make a change, that I was at the point where I'd stretched as much as I could. And a few years after that, I went and started a doctorate in education to learn because of all my leaps that were going on, I had gone into teaching in higher ed.
And that's another leap.
And other than being a student, I knew nothing. Interestingly, neither do many other people teaching in higher ed have no higher ed teaching training. And it wasn't as much teaching training as going into strategy and looking at technology. So part of my odd success stories is the ability and interest in cracking things open and starting from scratch. And that's hard when you're 40 or 50.
Right.
Is being willing to say, I'm willing to economically and experience-wise crack things open and start over.
And make a fool of myself if I have to, too.
Daily. That is my goal. I do that daily. So I went back and I realized that there were many things then that pull all this together in teaching and education that really rang a bell for me that hadn't been rung before that. So when people now look at my interesting grab bag of everything, it's been really added to over time by me coming into a new environment with my puzzle pieces, trying something new that adds in, and oftentimes me going, I don't understand this at all, and having to figure this all out. So a lot of my work now is in helping people figure all this out in those edges between media and music and understanding how finance impacts their businesses and their lives and tech into all. So it's been this additive journey, but for your average person, they've been living in a professional box. And your average organization is still looking on a resume for I want to see the linear progression that goes to XYZ. So I do think some point in time, whether you're 40 or 20 or 60, that it may be you creating your own company.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
so that you have a place to put all this great stuff you've become.
Well, a lot of people are retiring early and starting small businesses with what they really have wanted to do since they were in their 20s.
But had to put it off because of taking care of kids, parents, mortgage, or that's the box they thought the story was supposed to be X, that they had to do X, And I have a bunch of students, especially first-generation U.S. students, who still think, I have to go to engineering. My parents want me to be an engineer.
Or a doctor.
Or a doctor. But a lot of times their parents have, come to the U.S. and are, working 3 jobs, but had a professional degree where they were, and they understand the appreciation for the educational side of it. So I added music back in also in 2005 and was an independent musician, doing concerts, doing events, doing about 40 concerts a year based out of Monrovia, and started working with independent musicians on helping them understand some of the stuff, how to be a business, how to market yourself.
And that's the hardest thing for them.
They all have to be business. They had then to be businesses. Now they totally have to be businesses.
Right, because there's contracts, especially in music and arts.
And you're a brand. And you have a community, and you have a tribe, and you have to be marketing. You have to be on social. You don't have to, but you kind of need to figure all that out.
Right, right. So are you working with people? Are you training? You're training at UCLA.
In 2010, they posted a job, a very box-like job, looking for someone to teach music marketing. And my sister, who teaches in Europe, saw it in the education listings and said, hey, this job posted. So I submitted my resume. I was still teaching at the business school part-time in digital disruption and technology. And they had me in the next day to interview, and I created a new class on internet marketing and branding for musicians. And I really didn't know that much about it other than the stuff I'd figured out. But I work with a bunch of 20-year-old musicians, and we, from scratch, looked at what does it take to launch a career? And what are the tools? And how is all this internet and downloads impacting what you actually would build and become? So I was starting from scratch again, but with pieces of my odd pedals, right?
Right, your pedals.
And so we built a class from scratch. That there really wasn't that much at the time at other schools of music that was looking kind of at cutting edge internet marketing. So I again had someone who was willing to be that standard bearer for me, to stand up for me and say, we will let her build something crazy and new, and we'll have patience for it, and I'll take any of the flack. There wasn't really flack, but I'll be the one who's her sort of shepherd and umbrella to make sure she can build this. So that was in 2010, part-time, while I was doing a bunch of other stuff and that sits in Marymount on boards and helping with a bunch of other companies. And part of ICANN, the folks who run the internet, I was actually a representative to them, write about them.
Okay.
You might just have an attention problem, but adding a bunch of things to the puzzle. But then kind of around me, a music industry minor was developed, and I was one of the beginning classes for it. And it now is written up in Billboard, and we're about to, I think it's public information, launch a full music industry major. I teach 2 of the main classes in it. And then in 2014, though, I went to the dean or the executive director of the school at the time and said, the music business is changing pretty dramatically. You guys should have a center looking at the major changes happening, and I should not run it. You should bring somebody in who knows the music industry. I'm an outsider. I've got all these weird pedals, and I've been singing since I was 16, and I've been figuring this out, and I have a couple albums I've put out and a bunch of other stuff, but this is not my space. And so he came back and said, oh, let's do it as a pilot, but you're going to run it. And so I thought, okay, I will try this for 6 months and see if this works. It's been 5 years now, 2014 to now, and we've grown it. I'm on the board of South by Southwest Music, the advisory board there. I speak all over the world, but I'm still an outsider. But I'm in the Wall Street Journal and New York Times, and
it's good. But you've got some. But your pedals are...
My pedals. I have my pedals. Right? No, but part of it is being the outsider. I'm a boundary spanner again. I'm that bridge between academia, students who are new musicians, technologists in the industry. And I created a podcast, we're in our 3rd year now, called Innovating Music, where I use my skills from KJAM, of interviewing people and talking to people and doing things, to then be able to interview top change agents in the music industry who are doing cool things from all walks of life, and then have that as a learning experience to then create a media property, bringing back in my film degree, audio editing and creation skills, to then have an interesting mix that all these petals added up into a job and career that I made up.
Yeah, that's why I call you the Renaissance woman. But and I think a lot of the information on careers out there is really very false. And you're right, you have to go out and talk to the people. You cannot keep sending resumes.
Well, you can, but it's one of the strategies, the percentage, and so part of it, one of the globes now is careers, that I do a lot of work now.
So put your globe career.
Okay, but because of my journey, right, I look at what my own students and my own kids are told, and it's, by this degree, 27% of people are doing a job that matches their degree, period, in the United States.
Yeah.
So the whole thing of come to college, which I appreciate at any age, as long as you don't do it too expensively. No debt. Try not to do the debt. That's a whole other part of the whole thing. I need to come back to that. But
we'll talk about that.
Yeah, because there's so many ways to go to college now at a cost-effective basis that are not the traditional schools, but are still college, that I didn't know until I went and got my doctorate in education. I'm kind of going, why does no one tell me that there's all of these new college, or some old college options that are
like stuff online,
and some stuff that's face-to-face that are whole different models that are different economics and opportunities that people don't know and see. And so we tend to be, the customer acquisition cost, the cost to market for the average freshman first-year student is $2,500 to get that person to be there on the first day of school. So there's a gigantic machine to market to get you through the various pipelines and funnels to be in those seats. For master's programs, it's much, much bigger than that. And so you're being marketed to, and the folks who've got great inexpensive programs are not going to spend the $2,500 to let you know it's out there or get on all the listings and all that stuff. So I'm fascinated by all that because there's a whole marketing machine to get us to get a degree. And I'm just as much as fault as anybody to say, come get a degree in XYZ, like
right.
Anybody really cares what that degree is in, with some very specific exceptions. But then you can go do whatever you want with it. That a degree should be a great Swiss Army knife, that you can have it be malleable in your life. But there's an odd mythology that is heavily marketed, that you get a degree, you put your resume out there, you are part of these, Indeed or LinkedIn systems, and then magically something will happen. And that isn't how it works. But if you look at all of the marketing materials out there,
right.
and all of the things when you go search for jobs, it's all funneling you into these pipelines. And so the core story is, do these things and life will happen. And the key success story is everything else, but no one heavily says that story.
What's implied?
That you should go find your own way. I had a student last term.
Well,
she is
no,
wonderful.
I mean, it's not implied. I'm sorry. It's not implied. When you go to school, like I was in the 60s, so that in that generation, there were the 5 careers there were only 5 careers women could go into. Mm-hmm. And so I'd never wanted to be a social worker. I couldn't handle that. And then I didn't want to be in nursing because I didn't want to. But I got to teaching. I thought that's the best
mm-hmm.
of the worst,
I like teaching.
I like teaching, but this was an important thing for me. I liked the kids.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't like being stuck in a classroom day in and day out. I did not realize it until I was there day in and day out. There's nothing about the kids. Every day for 9 months.
Yeah.
I didn't like that. Now, you think I would know that, but I did not know that.
Well, a lot of people don't know what they don't like about a job until they're in the physical space.
They're in the physical space.
But a lot of it is that there is encouragement to go job shadow and to see what it's like. But you talk to your average engineering student.
Not in the 60s.
Well, no, even now. You talk to your average engineering student and you say, have you gone to sit at an engineer's desk to see what they do day in, day out? And the answer most likely is no. And then they get out in engineering, and many of them are coming back going, but I didn't want to just sit at a desk or behind a computer, or this isn't what I really thought. I mean, same thing's been happening for many years for lawyers, but there's the noun and the verb. And so I'm a gigantic fan. I mean, we've just spent a lot of time talking about my nouns. But what is it, although these are my verbs, kind of,
Yeah,
right?
okay.
Or these are my subject matter expertise.
Okay.
But what is it, the verb of what you do? So, I mean, you ask, what do you do? But part of it is people tend to say titles, not the, what is the work in the world? And I tend to say, we talk about, you know, the subject of a sentence,
Right.
and it really should be the verb and the object. I am doing what activity with whom and where. And so we talk to students saying, well, I'm going to be an engineer, and going, well, what do you actually want to do? And with whom? And they go, well, I don't know. Well, do that work. What is the verb of the word, of the work? What is the day-to-day activities? If you didn't want to be sitting in a classroom all day, for one of my kids who is an engineering grad, she didn't really want to sit in a lab all day. And when she puzzle pieced that all together, she's realizing after doing lab work in school, that wasn't what she wanted her life to be. But part of it is she didn't realize sort of the verb of the wheres and whos that was going to be impacted by the work. She originally went into it because she was extremely passionate about bioengineering and changes in medicine from sort of molecular level engineering, not realizing that what you do is sit in a lab all day with test tubes and spectroscopy, whatever the gear was. I have two other kids who love the gear side of things. They want to work with stuff, and that's their joys. And so part of it is we don't ask those questions when what do you want to do for a major, or where do you want to work, or with whom do you want to work. And in many ways, by having those label boxes, we don't build the journey questions to go talk to people and say, what is it that you find intriguing of your life, and what of that part?
I always like to find out why where they're going and why. That's the fun part. And where's the passion? You know, years ago when we were doing the Johnson O'Connor Human Engineering, my husband was more of an engineer type. He graduated in math and physics, right? And he got it. He went to Cal State, and then he went to Berkeley. And I think he spent 2 years at Cal State, Long Beach, and then went up to Berkeley and majored in math and physics. And when he went back, he hated it up at Berkeley in math and physics. And what they found out when he took the Johnson O'Connor, he wasn't an abstract person. And the physics department and math department at Berkeley
Is very.
and he should have been at a college
That has hands-on engineering.
applied. It's called applied.
Yeah.
And he said, no one
tells you that stuff up front.
No one tells you this stuff.
And that's the same case now. I mean, if you go to Cal Poly Pomona, it's very much of a hands-on, smaller class environment, or a slope, San Luis Obispo. But other universities in engineering, you are sitting doing abstract work for really long times in really large classes. And we don't tell that story up front. Or there's a lot of folks, I mean, Harvey Mudd, somewhat down the street from us, small classes, much more kind of intense and kind of a hybrid of the two. But it's not going to show up necessarily in your top list unless you're looking. I mean, so we make a lot of decisions for college based on rankings, and maybe if we knew somebody there, and not what's the work in the world that the faculty do, what is the impact, what do alumni do in the world, and what are the options that I would really have from it. There's so many ways to do college to build the verb, right? So I want to do X. If you want to do aerospace engineering, I mean, there's Embry-Riddle, where you could be in Arizona taking classes, or do it online and be able to do it customized to whatever you want from the comfort of your own home.
Yes, yes.
Western Governors, where you can put together all sorts of different undergrad or grad school programs that you can start any month that you want, and it's $3,600 every 6 months to take all the classes you can drink.
Oh, wow.
So there's so many, and totally accredited and all that stuff. The ways you can build the experience, what you want to do, the superpowers within it are so flexible out in the world to go find. And there's, if you want to have a university that's all geared around outdoor and eco-related issues, there's a university for that. If you want to contract directly with your faculty for every single class, there's a university for that. So, but they're not marketing to you. They're not spending the $2,500 towards you to get you to come into the classroom. It's such a competitive space where there's so many different ways you can do college, and we tend to be pipelined and not realize there's choice. So one of my pet issues right now is about personal choice. In many ways, whether it's careers or buying a house or a car or health or other issues, that we're so funneled into our choice sets by what we see, especially online right now, and what the algorithms show us,
Right.
that there's I would say it's maybe just as much the 40-year-old and the 60-year-old as the 20-year-old. When you basically go to say, what is my alternatives, for jobs or for school or whatever, is a lot of people have now gone from the, I'll talk to the career counselor and the people who come to school to talk to me, to now they think I'm going to put it in Google and
Search
what
this.
comes out, and those are my choices.
Right.
I had a student last term who came to me and said, well, I needed an internship. I typed in search for music internship, and I had options, and I put my resume in, and I didn't get anything. I don't know what to do next.
So you're working with them too.
Yeah. And a lot of it is how to step outside the search box to say, let me look deeper. Who's doing all the cool spaces in between, and go talk to them. And basically find out who's doing the work in the world that I would love to resonate with and build my superpowers around. And that's not a skill that we've got kids coming out of high school and college with,
Right.
or repackaging themselves at age 40 to say, what is the cool work in the world? So a lot of my work right now outside of UCLA is bringing those questions up.
Are you going to do anything locally around here if you're bringing these questions up?
There's some programs that I'm working on building, and we've been doing some pilots with other universities as well to help people. There's an online class that we've taken down right now. I'm going to put back up at nextcareer.me, which is a sort of 5-step process to think through your story and how you make decisions and how you do research into figuring out what your own superpowers are and the kind of gap to where you want to go. And it's kind of a journey path that we actually designed to be about 6 hours, but most of the people who've done it have come back and go, it's a little bit like eating chips. You just want to keep going. And so it's more like 10 hours to go through and do some self-discovery work and learn how to do some research. So we're rebuilding nextcareer.me, and it'll probably be back up in the next month, but it's a free online class. And we're looking to be doing workshops in the community with partners largely, though, so we're not presently open to individuals. But we've been working with anything from USC Engineering to other programs to sit down and say, how do you make decisions? How do you search and discover and gather ideas and figure out where you want to be a boundary spanner or talk to people about their jobs? We were doing some work indirectly with the e-parachute people, which is how I got to know them. Road Trip Nation has some great stuff out there also. There's a lot of great programs out there. We're right now actually in a kind of relaunch mode in the next few months
Okay,
through Marimel.
So I'm going to ask you to face the camera. You're used to this.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And you can give your name, telephone, any information if people wanted to reach you.
Wow. Kind of depends on what you'd like to reach me about. So the first thing you probably want to do is figure out from all the stuff I've been talking about what I actually have done. So I actually would start on LinkedIn. I'm Gigi Johnson on LinkedIn. You can also find me at gigijohnson.net and Marimel at marimel.com. marlenemel.com.
Spell it.
Maremel, Margaret, Evan, Melissa, my 3 kids, though Evan only has 1 letter. He's a little upset about that. You can find my music stuff, which is pretty exciting, at schoolofmusic.ucla.edu, but you can find in any of your podcast places Innovating Music, the 3-year podcast, interviewing all sorts of cool people in the music, technology, and social change world. And you can also find out specifically work on music cities, how hyperlocal and civic organizations are getting together to change local music scenes. You can look at it from the Los Angeles perspective at musicinla.org. That's one of my current play spaces, is getting people around Southern California to talk to each other about what's been happening in technology impacting music and social change. We've had a conference with the City of LA, or the City of LA had the conference in February. We did in May, and we're going to be having one on September 19th in Santa Monica, and then to be announced downtown LA and San Fernando Valley. So,
is there a way that somebody could reach you the best? I know this is hard.
To email me?
To email you, yes.
You can.
That would be. I think that would be easier.
It would be. There's a contact page at gigijohnson.net.
Okay.
So that's probably the best way.
Probably, yeah.
I get about 300 emails a day, so just a straight email tends to get lost in the mist.
Well, just on the email.
And Twitter, you can find me at Gigi Johnson.
Okay, let's get back to the email. Just say, what do you do show? If you're going to contact Gigi,
Yeah.
use my show, and she'll know what that's about.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, but I still live this life, that I have all these different pieces of the puzzle. We're getting close to announcing a bunch of new projects that haven't been announced yet, that are looking at a lot of these things. I also do post a lot of things on Twitter, so another way to follow without connecting is that they can follow me on Gigi Johnson or at Maremel. I also go to a lot of really interesting conferences, so some people follow me there to see all the different things they could be going to also be picking up ideas in their lives.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. This has been fun. This is Marlene Gibb with What Do You Do?